Really good. Okay, thank you so much for this. Is the meeting for 45 Bates Street on November 11th, 2024. And Mr. Wotus is going to begin sharing in just a moment. There you are.
Okay, is everyone able to see the screen there?
Yeah.
Should
Okay.
be.
Excellent. Well, again, Ryan Wotus here on behalf of the applicant for the proposed special exception request that's pending before the Zoning Board of Adjustment for consideration this Thursday. Appreciate everyone's time this evening. And I know, Christian had reached out and said that the community groups had some interest, at least in understanding, I think, the application. So happy to have that discussion, and that's why we're here this evening. So appreciate everyone taking the time out of their busy schedule to, hopefully have a little bit of a brief discussion on what's proposed. So I have a brief slideshow here, one to walk through. I'm sure for those of you that are familiar, at least with the application, this is dealing with the property located at 4547 Bates Street. I've gone ahead here and outlined it in red, identifying as the subject property. The site itself fronts on Bates Street here. Hodge Street sort of bisects the property between the actual buildings itself and a second parking parcel that is associated with the use of this site. There's additionally parking lot located on the southern point of that, directly adjacent to the building itself. To the west of the site is the exit ramp off of the Parkway West as you're heading inbound into the city. Across Bates Street, just to orient yourselves, this is the Oakland exit coming inbound as well. Bates Street heading up the hill to the boulevard. And it's basically where we're at. Down to the south is 2nd Avenue. Slightly off the screen is Hot Metal Bridge. So I'm sure everyone's quite familiar with this location. Having been to Oakland once, you've probably passed it coming inbound, especially if you're coming from the east. Went ahead, this is a screenshot from Bates Street looking at the existing building and development. The front facade here, just to identify where this use is proposed for, there's 4 separate doors that are located off of Bates Street. To the right of the image is actually for the residential use that's located in the red building that's sort of the 2nd, 3rd story above the front facade elevation. There's 2 other doors here. These would be part of the proposed retail use, which would come to about where the telephone pole is located here. There's no use being proposed for this what I call the 4th door as you head closer down to Hodge Street and 2nd Avenue. Took another image. This one's a little bit dated. I do have a next slide that'll show an updated view of the building. This is the corner of what I was talking about, Hodge Street, Bates Street. This again is the portion of the building that would not be associated with the change in use to retail sales and services. Hodge Street again curls sort of back to behind the building. You can see the existing parking lot here and parking lot to the rear. Just putting more images on here for you. Front exterior, we just went through that one. Rear exterior, there are several garage doors that are located to the rear of the site. There would be access permitted for employee access through this door that's existing here, that you'll be able to go in and actually they could traverse a set of stairs up to the 1st floor where the use is proposed. Side parking lot, again, this is showing the updated facade in comparison to the prior image that I'd shown. And then again, the additional rear parking lot located to the west of the existing buildings.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. You want to wait till I go through the whole presentation and then field
Sure.
I'm sorry?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, happy to address questions at the end. I figured maybe I'll just run through this and then we'll go ahead and have a little Q&A. So zoning request that's before the board for consideration is a special exception. This is a change from the existing non-conforming use to another non-conforming use. So this site is located in the Hillside zoning district, very restrictive in terms of uses that are permitted within that zoning district. The current and historic use of the subject property itself has been as a restaurant, tavern, lounge, bar. whatever you'd like to categorize it as, but that's what it's historically been operated since the original CO, I think, was issued back in 1950. There have been several issued since that time, but they all evidence that same use. The existing current permitted amount of patrons there allows up to 260 people to come on site there. A little background, a little history of it. Again, you guys are probably familiar with it being the community group for a period of time. I think back in 2000s, this was Jameson's. It then transitioned to, I think it was a Hideout Lounge. And then most recently, at least from my recollection, I think it was Cafe XO Lounge. Again, as part of this proposed change in use, that use would be going away. And we'd be moving it over to Retail Sales and Services Limited, which limited is anything under 10,000 square feet, which this proposed use would be less than 10,000. So the use itself, what's being proposed for, it would be the retail sale of sort of vending machine, pinball machines, jukebox components. So it's not selling the actual unit itself. It's not selling pinball machines, but this would be a location that people that own those items that need to repair them, make changes to them, keep them, upkeep and otherwise, this would be a location that they would be able to come to and actually buy those components. So one thing that's important, I think, to as part of this discussion is from a loading, unloading perspective, this is not what you would typically expect from retail sales and services, where you may have a box truck coming a day, or you may have tractor trailers. We will not have that type of loading or unloading associated with this. This is typically customers would come in just their day-to-day passenger vehicle, could pick up whatever they're buying, and then they'd be on their way. Again, very low impact, not a convenient, again, because I'm sure the community may, you see retail sales and services, you're not sure what that entails, but it's not something that's going to be a high traffic generator by any means. It's very minimal impact. Typical staff would be two individuals per day. Again, customers, we would expect that to be very minimal. Typically, it's actually by appointment to come on site to go ahead and then peruse and determine what they need to go ahead and make the repairs to the existing equipment that they own. Talked about loading and unloading, again, very minimal. In terms of trips from the existing use, again, you have a use that permit 260 people within there. So you're already generating twice the number of trips at a minimum during at least a period of time. This would be maybe 4 trips, 6 trips a day. So it's basically doesn't exist. It's very nominal. Hours of operation would be more in line with your retail uses, maybe 9 to 5, 9 to 6, would not be operating till 2 a.m. like the permitted use would be with the restaurant bar lounge that has historically operated at that site. And again, this would significantly reduce, any impacts, and it frankly would have almost none just based upon the 9 to 5 operation and limited number of people that would be on site at any given day, and almost no, loading, unloading impacts that you may otherwise have associated with a retail sales and services use. The other piece that I think is important, and I'm sure for those of you who are involved in community process, if this were a change in use to the retail sales and services, it would effectively terminate that restaurant bar use if there were a concern that would have the opportunity to come back. So I think that creates a net benefit to the community to get rid of something that was much more of a traffic generator, much more negative impacts from the hours of operation and everything associated with that. So I do think that overall there is a net benefit to the community in terms of transforming from that use to what's proposed here. So that's basically all I have. It's a pretty straightforward request, but I'm happy to, I know we have at least one question out there. Happy to address any questions, comments you guys may have.
Yeah, I got a question. What's the reason you picked the location down here for?
It's just centralized in the city. So there isn't a location for this operator in Pittsburgh proper itself. So it gives you the ability, relatively easy access on and off the highway, close to Oakland. Basically, just centralized in the city. So it looked to be a good location from that perspective, really to provide convenience to get
Have
there.
you looked at other properties in the area?
I'm sorry.
Have you looked at any other properties in the area?
I don't know if they otherwise have, but this is the location that they decided would be a good fit for the use.
Okay, now, I mean, I just don't see that the potential for utilizing that building for what you're asking to do with it. I don't see, I mean, it sounds like you're developing, it's a corporation where machines, pinball machines, what, gambling machines? Is it just part? I mean, are you rebuilding them? What?
Nope, it's just the components. So it'd be replacement parts. So if something fails in there, so you're not bringing them on site. We won't have the machines there. So you're not coming there to look at them to buy or lease or otherwise. It's literally just coming to buy the components that would be needed to repair.
I have a question. My understanding when Jameson Restaurant left, the reason they were leaving was the Mon Valley Expressway was going to be coming there, and those properties going up Bates Street were going to be eliminated.
So Jameson's looked like that was like 3 operators ago. So I mean, I'm familiar with their, PennDOT's been looking at that location probably for a couple decades now, if not more. I know that there are still plans that are in process, but
that would make that property really valuable. If that Mon Valley Expressway goes through.
But he's not purchasing the property. You will continue,
Right.
you leasing it from Hodges Corp LLC?
yes, we would be just the tenant in there. We're not acquiring the property.
So I have one more point to make. So for me, if this business should fail, the next one goes in the permits or the ordinance has already been changed, which is actually the point. The point is that
Someone
you
else.
want that ordinance changed for retail sales and services. So, no, we don't know what comes in after that.
Because it's titled under.
Right, that would be the main concern.
You're changing the title for the residential, the area basically should be residential.
Well, it was commercial, but it's retail sales and services now.
But I mean, I'm just saying, it's gone through the history of different buildings and trying to develop into something where it's changed, it's grown. There are opportunities to do projects down there that are gonna change that land into something necessity that we need to access downtown, the parkway. I understand what you're looking at to change the title of that, which it sort of was a residential in that
I mean,
area.
it was commercial too, but there's no saying what the next, once that is changed, there's no saying what the next business will bring. And we're in between that particular property. I get that why it is so lucrative, it's right off the highway, but it's in between 2 residential districts, and we wouldn't want to change that, where in the future it would be something that
We
would
cannot,
cause more of a disruption to the neighborhoods. For instance, more truck trafficking and more, I know this particular person is saying they won't do that, but once that ordinance is changed, there's no preventing that from happening in the future.
Well, so what I would say is I think that one, we're changing from something that typically I would assume is probably more undesirable if it went back to the bar restaurant use. 2 is one thing that makes this a difficult site, and for a user that would generate a lot more trip traffic or loading and unloading, is it's really not a functional or feasible location to do something that has high trip generation, because it's accessible, but it's not very accessible for a user that would expect a lot more customers to be coming on site. So it actually fits well with this use, and I think that's probably why it hasn't been utilized for a period of time, because if it were a location that you could have high trip generation or traffic, it probably would have been utilized by now, because it's in a good accessible location, but it's difficult to actually feasibly get on and off the site day to day. But again, I think the key, I think also, is the retail sales and services under the ordinance is a much less intense use. in terms of where that's permitted in comparison to a restaurant or bar use. So it's moving it closer in the direction of a less intense use than what currently is permitted to operate there.
We have a hand
See-
raised online here from Elena Zaitsev. Elena, would you like to ask your question?
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Okay. When I looked up 45 Bates Street, 5 parcels came up under that address, but only 1 parcel is listed on your application. So I guess my first question is that the only parcel? Was this an
So
omission?
the addressing is a little bit odd in terms of how it operates there. So 45, 47 though has been historically how it's been, the address has been placed for basically the existing bar restaurant location. So that's the same address that we've been utilizing.
Okay,
So
well, I'm interested in the parcels, starting down at, 114 and then 116, 117, 118 is what was put on the application. The owners also own 119. So my question is this only applying to 118, 29B, 118? And since the occupancy seemed to cover all of them, if this, is to terminate that previous occupancy permit, would, even though it looks like from your application, you're only asking about 118, would then that terminate it for all the other parcels down to Second Avenue?
What I would say is I think that it effectively would, seeing as a certificate of occupancy would have been issued for the entirety of it. So if there were something that was coming in proposing, so it's tough to see. I just pulled up the GIS again. So 118 looks like the portion basically all the way to the left, which would be that 4th door. I think that if that were, depending on where they break that up, I think that probably would be separate. It depends on where that property line runs right through that, but we included the parcels that were owned by the landlord in the application itself.
The only parcel in the application I'm looking at is 118.
Okay.
I pulled this from the ZBA site, so if indeed, it's meant to be all the other parcels, would you please amend the application?
Yeah, I'm happy to reach out to Daniel ahead of time. And then we can just amend that at Thursday.
And also the largest parcel, 119, which is on, the other side going up the hill, also owned by the same people.
Correct, 119, yeah. That's what you're saying, I'm sorry? Just trying to follow exactly what you're saying.
Yes, 119 as well.
There's a question.
Yep.
Okay,
No
thank-
problem.
So you mentioned about, there's only gonna be a few people a day coming in by appointment. How are they getting stuff in? Is it, are they not trucking parts in, or they haven't mailed in, or?
So I think that initially there would obviously have to be the merchandise brought in. This isn't something that has a high turnover rate. So after that, no, it would be brought in just via passenger vehicles. But I don't anticipate that there would be a ton of truck traffic coming into this site by any means.
Okay, and then, so with what I'm looking at here says change in retail sales will terminate the existing restaurant bar. Unless I misheard you earlier, it sounded more like it might be terminated, which.
No, so if what we're asking for is a change of use that relates to the underlying property, which is, again, so certificates of occupancy aren't typically, well, historically aren't issued for block and lot or parcel ID number. It's just property address. So the property address is 4547, which is what our application is for. So if there were a new CO issued for this use, then yes, that would be, because you only operate off the most recently issued certificate of occupancy.
So you can't just walk in off the street and go into this facility. You need an appointment.
That is how it would operate. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds a little,
I couldn't hear you.
So Millie has her hand raised as well.
I have a question about, does Hodges Street, isn't that Hodges Street behind it, the building? Does that
Yes.
stay open?
Yes,
That-
that won't be impacted at all. That's a public right of way.
Okay, all right.
And Elena, is your hand back up?
Yes, it is. I just want to mention that, the, I guess, application I saw on the ZBA site lists the address as just 45 Bates. It does not have 4547. So if
Okay,
that could be amended.
However, that populates on its own, so, but again, I could talk to Daniel just as I discussed with him on the parcel ID identification.
Thank you.
They need to take that process. Not here.
I'm sorry, if there was something that was being said in the room just now, it wasn't audible to people in the room.
Sorry.
The area and how it will be, attracting people to come to the facility for parts and
It's just
how
strange.
is it advertised? How do they know that this is legit, what this building is? We don't know. So we're just saying, you're putting a building in here. Well, I mean, because my first question was, there are other properties that this realtor owns that will accommodate, that are in your same size, but not that location, that are up for rent, that you could do that in other areas. Why are you picking this general area is my concern.
I don't know why that'd be a concern. I think you would think people would want to come to the neighborhood, but what I'd say is there's a lot of factors that go into that. It's terms of layout, access, price point in terms of rental rates. So there's more that go into it than just looking specifically at location alone. So there's a ton of factors that were considered in terms of picking this location.
Well, I mean, my comment is more like, if this gentleman that rents it wants this to be changed instead of the way it is, there are other places that you can go that are tight.
He's saying he's choosing this because of other reasons. I don't know.
I'm just curious on that, why it's all of a sudden being changed.
Can I ask, does he have any other locations in this general region?
Yeah, there's another location actually in Etna.
In Etna, okay.
And
And for
that's-
everybody's information, lots 114, 116, 117, and 118 are listed as 45 Bates Street.
So you get the whole thing.
Leasing it, whatever. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
little
he's leasing
deceptive.
it. This is,
Yeah, the land,
Yeah, we're not
that
buying.
kind,
if the land is not changing, it's just the use.
It's-
Right, and that was a lot for when James was in here, you needed ample amount of parking spaces to operate that business in it. That's the reason that all those land were bought, because you needed for parking cars in those areas, you needed to have that to run that business for 260 persons that were able to come here. I mean, they're not using it, they're saying, I don't know what they'll do. Once she gets it, you can do whatever you change it, you can change it to whatever you want.
That's the thing, the order.
Once you change an ordinance and we give you, say, the right to do whatever
It's
you
not
want,
us giving it.
or whatever, the city says, we'll go what you want because you want to put another business in there to upgrade to this. Now it changes that, so anybody who comes there next just follows you. And it goes again, and it goes again. That's why I'm saying there's other places that you want to change this.
Well, it's quick off the parkway and quick on the parkway. So if you're doing something.
Yeah, but like we were saying, the plans down the road were supposed to be, that was gonna be wide, the Main Street. And I see that beneficial more to what you're looking to turn it into, is to a business, where there's businesses you can put anywhere. You can go Butler Street, you can go anywhere, there's opportunities to places. Etna's a great place, unless it floods, but,
can I ask one more question? Will the daycare be remaining and, will they be using that for their bus stop stuff?
So I don't know the second question, but yes, so any other uses on there, we're not impacting the daycare, yes.
You're not impacting the daycare, so the daycare is still operating?
That's my understanding, yes. That just, again, as a tenant, but what I would say is the area that we're utilizing as part of this use is vacant.
I have another question.
Mhm.
With the change in use, does that change the the lighting and the volume of noise and what happens in the neighborhood. And I also want to say to this gentleman that we remember Lasix when that was a wonderful restaurant. So please don't belittle our restaurants in Oakland. I haven't been down there recently to whenever it's changed, but anyway, just remember, it used to be a wonderful restaurant and it could be again. But what about noise and lighting? How is that going to change? I'm guessing you're going to have some security lighting?
There's no proposed changes for the facade of the building or exterior.
Oh, okay,
So everything you see now will stay the same.
okay, all right.
And I apologize if someone was taken as demeaning or minimizing what was there, but I was just talking generally in terms of how the zoning ordinance treats restaurant, bar versus this type of use.
So I have a question, Mr. Wodas, which I understand that you were not enormously optimistic that PennDOT was going to be proceeding with its plans in short order, but our understanding was that the plans for exactly how Bates widening was to be accomplished, those are to be released relatively shortly. And I'm just kind of curious about the timeline of your development plans in this space, or which is to say the renovation and repurposing, any location of a new business in this location. I would imagine it would matter enormously to you what the decision is for PennDOT about how they're going to accomplish the widening. Like funds have been allocated for that. That's been moved off the long range plan and onto the tip. Like it's gonna happen. And so I'm just kind of curious to know about the timing here, whether there's any flexibility in your schedule, or what kind of adaptability you have in your arrangement.
Well, so the proposal would be is if the change were approved by the ZBA, I think that they would begin utilizing it pretty quickly. But if there's things that need to be worked around with PennDOT, then obviously PennDOT's going to dictate how that works. But because we're not changing the facade or doing all kinds of renovations to it, there's not a major lead time, meaning we get this approval and then it's not in there for a year. So I mean, I know that the Bates Street stuff is close to being finalized. I know it hasn't been finalized, but I know the process has been ongoing for a long period of time. But what our expectation would be is, yes, if this were approved, we'd be using it pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Yes, I have another question. So you just said that no changes to the outside. Do you have to make changes to the inside?
There would be basically utilizing what's sort of there. So what's remained in there at this point, because a lot of this is the way they would just be set in there is these are large rooms that, you know, the tables have been removed, the bar is still there, things like that, but most of it we'd be able to utilize around it. So there wouldn't be major renovations at all anticipated with this.
How much actual space do you need? I mean, you showed me the building. I'm just curious on the layout of size. What do you, I mean, in general, what are you stocking? Are you supplying? I mean, can this be ordered online, this stuff, or is this just a storefront? I mean, I'm just not seeing the whole picture of what you're trying to adapt to.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's online sales like anything else in the world. You know, you can order from every retailer. But the way that this sort of works is that it would be, and it seems, you know, for people that don't you know, utilize this service, there's not places that you can get these components and parts, right? So these are old, some of these are old machines, things like that. So this is it's a niche thing. But this would still be, so people that need those materials, there's not a lot of locations to get that. So people will be coming here and you know, the operator's a known entity for seeking out these types of components. So in terms of interior layout, I think the total's around like 6,000 feet of space. It's a little bit segmented in there just because of the existing layout, but that's what they're looking to utilize.
Yeah, it just seems very interesting. I'd like to see the layout of it.
It's not. But again, it's not. Okay.
Okay, any additional questions from the room? Any additional questions online? Thanks very much, Mr. Wotus. We really appreciate your time, and we will store this recording on our website at opdc.org for anyone who'd like to peruse it. The zoning hearing has been continued to the 14th at 9:30 in the morning. And if anyone would like to be able to deliver comments, instructions are online for how to send comments to the zoning board. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. You as well. Appreciate everybody's time.